Martyn. I'm from the Home and Garden department, but we, as a company, we want to explore some inspiration from people, and we love what you're doing in Iceland. Obviously, two separate people, but a couple. So could you introduce yourselves individually and let the audience know who you are?
Yeah, so I'm Björk, and I am co-founder of a company called Melta, and we've been scaling up the bokashi method for rural municipalities. So it's kind of like a decentralized, centralized bokashi operation.
Wow. And
I'm Karim Iliya. I'm a photographer, filmmaker. I run an ocean conservation nonprofit, and then I am part of a space program.
He just says it really casually, just part of the space program, it's just a general conversation. When I asked you both to be on our podcast, I really wanted to know, how you even, came together to begin with. It's a bit personal, I understand, but it's really interesting to see how you met. So you got a bit of information of how you two met?
The exciting short answer is that the Earth, the raw, molten rock, volcanoes is what ultimately brought us together. I came out to Iceland to photograph Fagradalsfjall, a volcanic eruption. And we reconnected, and it's really the new formation of land and rock that brought us together, which is
And then the long answer is we met through a mutual friend in 2016, and then we didn't speak for 5, or we just met, and then 5 years later he came.
It's a volcano that really brought us back.
Yeah, that's way more romantic.
Oh, I can see who's a romantic in this relationship straight away. So very different careers. Obviously, myself and Björk have been working on some projects with bokashi. You're over in the UK because you've won an award, although you've been very humble about it, etc. So, Björk, can you tell us a little bit about how we've been working together and try and give us a brief outline of what's happening with Iceland and the issues that we have, obviously, with everyone in any country, with food waste?
Yeah, so I got to know bokashi when I was living in Denmark, actually, and I heard there were 2 friends of mine that were testing it out a little bit there, and then I went to their final exam. It was while we were at school, and they said that without doing anything else, if half of all towns and cities in Denmark would use bokashi as their method to treat food waste, Denmark would succeed the Paris Agreement. I haven't redone those calculations, but that for me was that's very unique. And then when I moved back to Iceland, I was working in a tech or software development company as a team coach, and as fun as that was, I was very excited about this the bokashi method. So I first started doing workshops for just people that wanted to do it at home, and I studied kind of social design and facilitation. So my whole thought with it was, let's not just sell buckets to individuals, but let's do it in a way where we do orders for a whole group of people, and then we have all of these strangers meet as we teach them how to do it.
Cool.
So that people don't feel like they're alone, doing a lot of heavy lifting, but they know that they're a part of a community.
A bigger process, yeah.
Yeah, and we started those workshops actually asking why people were there, and there we found out we're there is a lot of will to do this.
Yeah.
People are just not being met. So how about scaling it up for actual municipalities and not laying it all on the individual to do it.
And obviously you have an interest in it. Karim, as a complete outsider, it's really interesting because I like to see both sides of the story. When Björk talks about bokashi, etc., do you feel that from someone who doesn't know everything about it, do you find that there's quite a stigma in food waste?
I haven't thought much about soil in my life or compost, but I do have this vivid memory as a child of my parents would make me go and take out the compost and dump it in the big thing. And it was that dripping bag. And when I would open up the big food, the compost container, this was for a building block in South Korea, the smell of it made me almost vomit. And I hated doing that. And so coming in and seeing Björk's work, where she's using a type of composting that doesn't smell bad and you don't have to go through that whole thing, I can immediately see why this is a good idea. And you say, okay, I understand now. Because most of us aren't even thinking about microbes in the soil. We're not thinking of soil as being alive. It's just dirt, right? Most people think of soil as dirt, and you just put seeds in the dirt, and the sun and the water makes things grow. And that's kind of the extent of it. So it's been very exciting to be thrown into this world and start learning about it.
You find that people just can't relate what they're eating and the output and then the soil and then that cycle. Do you find that difficult to get people to understand?
Yeah, in a way. And it's such a large system because it has something to do with like human behavior and then the ecology and then just like the infrastructure. But it's been fun when you bring people in. It's so fun to see people just light up and be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's... And the system, and the systems that we have today, both in regards to like how we do like traditional agriculture and how we treat waste, they're like a double, triple negative. And it's so fun to get to play with these and make them a double, triple positive where it actually feeds into each other.
So going back to kind of your nature photography, is it mostly water-based photography that you personally do?
I do I do above water, I fly drones, and I shoot underwater. Photographing underwater is my favorite. So I spend a lot of time with humpback whales and sperm whales, and sometimes other whales like blue whales, basically just photographing marine life. And to be able to open up this world and then share that with other people, is really interesting, to take people to a place that they don't normally see. And I think that's also what you're doing with soil. Yeah, and I've moved from photography also into the world of conservation. And I generally try to focus on more positive form of conservation to show people the beauty of how things look in the world so that they can appreciate it. But of course, we are seeing more, even in my lifetime, seeing more places that have been affected. We're throwing plastics in the water, and so then that's ruining the ocean or it's heating up. But then there are so many layers on top of it, like agriculture and the runoff that then goes into the coral reef. So I do see the effects of it in going to coral reefs. And of course, it's getting harder and harder to find places that are still pristine. But there is also, nature is resilient. And if you just help it out a little bit or don't poison it, then it will usually recover very quickly. So it's exciting to see these projects not just taking place underwater where everything is hidden away, but also on land, that people are starting to think about this more. And that will affect the ocean in a positive way.
In respects to the Iceland project that you're doing at the moment, what's your output? What are you trying to achieve?
So we focus on rural municipalities. That's because we essentially for the households, we give them just the Actiferm spray, and that starts the fermentation at home. It's the bad smell of the food waste that makes it the most expensive waste stream to pick it up every 2 weeks because of the smell. And by starting this, we usually just call it the pre-fermentation at home. That means that we can have the pickups happen every 6 weeks, 30,000 kilometers a year that we save.
To pick up the buckets?
That's
quite a carbon impact.
Yeah, it's huge to that is 70% reduction in just collection costs. Bokashi is especially good because it's kind of just like opening up these little microbreweries, which we see pop up everywhere. So we're able to then collect it every 6 weeks instead of every 2 weeks. And the user experience, I think that's one of the deliverables, is essentially just a better user experience for residents because they're not dealing with maggots and, flies and all the things that we don't like.
The ick factor. Your first experience with bokashi.
Then when you compare it to the old stuff that how we've been doing it, where you just have the food and it's rotting and it's dripping and it smells bad, then you say, this is much, much better. Mm-hmm. See people who are into compost and soil look at the bokashi and just smell it and enjoy it, and you realize, okay, this is good stuff. And it's like giving the soil the ingredients and the chefs to produce the nutrients, to cook, basically. Instead of just giving it one meal, you're giving it everything that it needs to continue to survive.
It's also fun because your dad does bokashi, or your parents do bokashi in Hawaii, and then they grow food from it as well. So he's
We as humans have just not understood how to process things, and food waste for me is a really important part of the whole cycle. In the UK, the biggest issue we have with food waste is the ick factor. People just don't like the idea of taking a waste item and doing anything with it. So the mentality in the UK is out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
Is that the same in Iceland?
Yeah, definitely. The people the other day that had been doing this with us for a year now, and they were like, they're saying that like we've had a family, like we're seeing people kind of like really like care and love their waste instead of being a thing that they just walked away.
It's interesting you said a year though. So
it happened quickly. It's just like they've been doing it for a long time, then we just got to hear about it now. But we only get. It's also like when people talk about waste management, they usually talk about it because they're complaining about it and they're unhappy about it. And if you work at a waste station like we've been doing, the phone calls you get are only to complain. And this was the first time the municipality started getting phone calls about something positive and that people were happy with.
Wow.
And it makes such a difference because these systems, the fun factor then after that is being able to like make these microbreweries and then being close to the farmers so that we can actually bring it straight to the soil there. And farmers is the ultimate goal, but currently because Iceland is essentially a big desert, 40% of our soils are severely degraded. So we're using it then just on site for soil restoration, which has been a lot of fun to see just what looks like parking lot gravel come to life within a year.
And bokashi is not the silver bullet. And I think this is what people don't really understand is you see a lot of companies out there going, well, you should do this because it's good for the environment, and greenwashing is becoming a regular thing I hear in marketing generally. And I always look at bokashi as a system of being able to give, as you said, that kind of the cook, the ingredients, the tools to be able to do it. But in the end, nature needs to be able to have that facility to do that. What inspires you to do what you do? So have you got anyone that kind of has given you the inspiration to develop what you're doing?
My drive is just collaboration, and I feel like this is the ultimate project for that. You have the microbes collaborating, you have people in the municipality or like the community collaborating, you have different fields, you have, the government, and you have farmers, and you have regular people. And then we have that into like this collaboration where like we help the microbes out by feeding them. They help us out by feeding us feeding the soil, and then that feeding us. And it's just, for me, that's really the drive of like, it's the ultimate team coaching project.
What was that pivot point? What changed?
Yeah, I was working as a team coach. So I was focused on collaboration, but it was very much the vision. Like, am I contributing to society and to the environment in a positive way? And then I'm extremely practical, and I just looked at the system and I was like, this is so, like, it makes no sense. It is both more expensive and it's worse for everybody. So it just became such a fun, like, problem solving thing to do.
You also don't need a ton of it. I mean, from my perspective, the biggest visual shock, the thing that I've been looking for as a filmmaker, because I'm making, been working on filming and documenting the work that they're doing, was to see this very strong visual of, as we know in Iceland, so much of the soil is eroded. And basically they put half a ton of the bokashi onto the ground in this gravel, like not even soil, not even dirt, just almost gravel where nothing is growing, and it became an oasis, a bokashi island. And it's this stark visual in a desert. In this desert, there's this oasis of greenery from the seeds and the plants that were there, and it is visually shocking. And if there's nothing for me, like in trying to show and explain and tell this story, if there's nothing else, all I need to do is show people this is what they're doing. Like, they didn't do anything. They just put the microbes and the compost onto it and left it, and nature did its thing. If you just give it a helping hand or leave it how it should be, it will thrive. And you have this in this little oasis in this black desert. And that's something that I'm trying to capture more and focus and to help people like you and what you're doing communicate and tell the stories of, this is why we need to protect nature, and this is how easy it is to protect nature. You just need to not poison it and ruin it, and it will flourish. And seeing what Björk is doing and what everybody in her community is doing is very inspiring as well, because the process that they're working on, it doesn't, as you said, people don't want to be told what to do. And the exciting thing about Melta and what they're doing is that it's baked into the system, and it's easier and it's better and it's more convenient. And I come from the philosophy, we've had this idea that we should, companies have been blaming the common person and saying it's your fault, it's your responsibility, you're doing it wrong, you need to do better to save the earth. And it took me years, and only recently I realized that it is unfortunately our responsibility. It's not our fault, but it is our responsibility. And the way to really do that is to, put it into the system so that we can just live our lives and without destroying the place. I don't want to go to the supermarket and have to try and see which laundry detergent will not poison the waters. That's why I pay taxes. That's why I live in a society with a government. That should be their job, so that the common person can just do the thing that they do, and it should all be fine. And what I love about what they're doing is when it's built into the municipality and the system, the common person just does the easiest, most convenient, enjoyable way of dealing with their food waste, and then it rejuvenates the earth. It doesn't destroy it. And that's how we should try and restructure our society and demand that our leadership restructures the society, is that we can just live and do the convenient, easy thing, and it actually makes this place better, not worse.
And this is, so we talk about inspiration. I'll tell you a bit about my inspiration. I work for a large company, because we won't sectionize who that company was. I was in consumer electronics. I launched some very big phones in the UK, and I ended up understanding that consumerism is something that we just live with. We've created it. We can't get rid of it. It's just here. And in the back of my mind, I wanted to give back. So I actually trained to become a primary school teacher. So COVID was a good time for me. I had the opportunity to look at doing my teacher training, and I'll never forget the scenario that I was presented with in the UK. And I'm sure you can expand a bit more about Iceland. Education is key. And, we're talking about all these kind of scenarios and the inspiration, but actually it starts from the basics. In the UK, we have this society where we are designed to repeat things back. So, I teach you something and you can then repeat it back to me. But it doesn't mean that it means anything. And I'll never forget this child in the back of this class who was the problem child. You stick him out in the forest school, he was fine.
Yeah.
Like, you put him in dirt, and everyone was like, oh yeah, well, it's just because he wants to get mucky, etc. Well, maybe there's some other science involved. And I quit. I quit 3/4 way through the course. And I was in this limbo stage of like, no idea what I'm going to do. And sometimes things are, and I believe in fate. I'm one of those people with energy. And when I joined Agriton, I've got to be honest, I was like, oh my God, what have I let myself in for? I have no idea what I'm talking about. I've become like this, this person that goes, yeah, I'm really interested in it, but actually I have no idea. And my inspiration was actually talking to other people and I can definitely see where you're coming from. Understanding like the energy that people create around you makes your inspiration. And I asked the question thinking I was going to get like books and etc. But actually you hit the nail on the head. Actually, as a community, that's where inspiration comes from. And I feel that in the future, collaboration is going to be key. for us to develop as a world. I think that localization is key, but we need to make sure that that structure's there. I'm really interested in respects to Iceland. I just find that generally European countries are a lot further ahead with like natural based processes. Do you find that in Iceland? Is that something that you would agree with?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
More understanding of like being in touch with. When I say in touch with nature, sounds like really hippie.
No, but that. yeah. I mean, you can't escape it in Iceland. Like it humbles you. But I think
we have volcanoes with
and terrible weather and darkness, and But then we have hot water.
Have you had people who have just said, "No, not interested"?
Now we go and we meet people when we give them their home kit for the municipality, and it's a 5-minute visit. It's no more than that, and we just run through it with people, and that's just because I know for myself, if I get a brochure at home, I'm probably not going to read it. And instead of having a system where we're like hoping that people read a brochure, we just go and meet them, and we're like, we want you to collaborate on this with us. So we're not going to just have you do all the work. We'll run through it with you. And what we found is by making the sorting process at home like more convenient, not smell as much, like way less cleaning and taking out the trash, is that we've also gotten better sorting of organic waste. So we don't have as contaminated of a stream, which has been really, really fun.
What was the photo that you took that won your award?
Yeah, so we're here in the UK. I'm here in the UK because I am part of the People's Choice and the Wildlife Photographer of the Year. And I spend a lot of time documenting the lives of humpback whales, and they really live most of their lives under the surface. They pop up for a breath because they're mammals, and then they go back down. And sometimes you get to see, you every once in a while you get to see a humpback calf drinking milk from its mother, but it's usually down in the depths, and it's not really something that is so visible. And in this moment, there was the calf had missed some of the milk, and for whatever reason, not drank it, and so it was floating, swirling and floating up to the surface. And this is a moment that I had been for hundreds and hundreds of hours. I had never seen whale milk. And so I dove down and I started taking photos of this swirling milk, thinking, this is so exciting, something new. And then the calf started to come up in the background, and I realized that I would have an opportunity to take a photo of the milk and then give it context as well, instead of just this weird swirl of white liquid that then you say, oh yeah, it's whale milk, but to have the calf there then really tells that story.
And can you tell everyone like how you've even got to this amazing journey of being able to jet off into space?
Yeah, very exciting. I've always been interested in space as a kid. I've always wanted to go to space, but I pursued photography and filmmaking, and I thought, well, maybe in another life I will go to space, be an astronaut. But I still had this idea and still thought, you know what, one day I'm gonna go to the moon, and I'm gonna take a photo of the Earth from the moon's perspective. And I told a good friend this in university while we were sitting up in a tree, and 10 years later she sent me a link to an application for a mission called dearMoon with a Japanese entrepreneur who was funding it through SpaceX on the Starship rocket, which is the biggest rocket that has ever been built, that would bring 8 artists around the moon for 1 week. And so I applied to it. And space has always been very exciting. And it's one of those things where in today's world, people say like, oh, we should be focusing on, the problems down here on Earth instead of going off into space. And of course, it's very extravagant to go on a rocket and leave the planet. Funding for space does not take away from funding for, conservation projects or humanitarian projects. And what's actually exciting about space is it is the most hostile and unlivable environment. And when you try and solve the problems of how to live and survive and explore up there, you take these technologies and you can bring them back down to Earth, And so many of the things that we use today in our lives that make things better, grow food, and you can make air or clean the air, and you can create these circular systems up in space. You can take that and do it here on Earth. So that component of space is very exciting. And then on a visual side of things, to be able to see our whole Earth and to document it. I've spent my whole life documenting little pieces, these little looks here on Earth. So to be able to get out and away and actually, instead of looking out towards space, to look back on the planet and capture that and share that with the world is the most exciting thing. And, if I can use what comes with that and the attention that comes from that and put that into the rest of my work, ocean and land-based conservation, and to be able to show people a more full picture of why this place is important and why we should try and protect it and keep it for future generations. That would be the ultimate goal and dream. While I'm up in space, way, way far away, Björk has her hands in the dirt with the worms, working with the earth, like the core of it. And it's kind of a fun image.
How is that going? Do you feel that's going to help with your kind of mission in Iceland? And it's a weird thing to say because, there are two different aspects, but do you feel that bigger picture will give people a more localized understanding of what's going on in respect to seeing it from an outsider's point of view?
Yeah, I think one of the most powerful images ever taken is the photo of the Earth all in one, like every life that has ever existed in one photo. And I definitely don't want to go to space. I would say, we live in a paradise.
I'm only going for a week.
Yeah.
You come back and then I can continue the work here.
Yeah. No, I think absolutely. It's just it is so important that we go out there and explore. I personally would not want to go and build a colony out there just because why would I build a colony when we have this perfect place here, and it's so fragile, and I think it's so true that we're talking to I think she was a biologist or something like that the other day that had been doing this deep sea exploration of these deep sea bacteria, and how the bacteria there were used for PCR tests to detect COVID, and it's just this thing of what do we find out there that we can that can help us here, and how can we kind of become better stewards of this? And
this is what I like about you two as a couple, is because it's quite a dynamic that you have, because you're quite grounded.
If I could choose, we would develop a technology to make us smaller, and then they'd make little soil ships, and then we could dive. That would be so cool.
Soil diving?
Yeah.
I would go on a soil submarine.
Yeah. It holds more than half of the Earth's biodiversity. We'll see such cool things down there.
Yeah.
How you can decrease your impacts on the environment, what would be your one piece of advice?
I think I'm going to use Karim as an example. I think what the most important or the best thing you can do is take what you're passionate about and what gives you joy and figure out where you can contribute with that. Because we don't need people to be miserable and sacrificing. We don't have to sacrifice ourselves here. It's about, finding joy and contributing with that. And, he's going to make such an impact. Who would have thought that you got to go and do an unconventional thing your whole life, and then you get to go to the moon, and you get to make the impact that, the photos that you're going to take there. I didn't go to a traditional school. I'm interested in, I'm not an engineer. I haven't figured out all of the machinery part of building a waste facility, which is usually the first thing that we do. But we figured out the soil and the community part, and that's what's going to be the important part of it. So
the drivers.
Yeah. So I think it very much just find what gives you joy, what you're good at, what you're passionate about, and contribute.
What about yourself?
I think there's a few things that can be done. For me, I find that spending time in nature and encouraging other people to spend time in nature as well can help bring you to an understanding of how things work, how the system works, and that we are just one piece of this planet and we are a part of it. We are not the central focus, though we have made ourselves that. Also, demand more of your politicians and your companies, right? Vote with your money, and it's hard to do, of course, but I think that plays a big role as well when we collectively get together and do it.
I'd like to say thank you very much for coming over to the UK. Thank you very much for letting me interview you. And just for socials, how would people find you?
You find Melta on Instagram at MELTA _Melta again, MELTA. And I'm Brynjars on socials.
And yourself?
Yeah, mine is just my name, Karim Iliya, KarimIliya, and pretty much just across the web as that.
And Kogia for your...
Yes, my ocean conservation project, Kogia, is Kogia, and also just across the web.
Cool, lovely. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Cheers.